Okay, this topic that Betsy you have suggested is going to be very hot because most people would say that it is impossible, as Obama said, for anyone to meddle in the U.S. election. As we remember, before he got on the plane, as he was leaving after the inaugural, what did he say? We know for a fact there was not a single vote changed by Russian meddling in the election. Okay? He also gave the biggest cyber attack against any nation from America against Russia because of supposed their hacking of the election, which there was no proof of. We talked before about the 21 phishing viruses, not even viruses, what are those called, when you do a phishing, and it actually went to a poll, to a private computer of a person who worked at a poll, and they counted that as their Russian meddling. And then after that, what did Obama say? Homeland Security is in charge of the election. Now, I knew that, and I knew that also he brought in other federal agencies trying to make sure there was no Russian meddling.
Yeah.
But when I started talking with you, it blew me away. That Eric Schmidt and the Eric Schmidt Project, the template for winning, and then the U.S. Digital Service, $1.5 billion given by Eric Schmidt, where they created an office in the White House, which was basically a cyber bunker for fighting against Trump. This is all well known. And even, what's the guy's name? Chuck Todd, he sent his number one tech guy. Obama sent him out to be in the Hillary campaign.
No,
helping
Todd Y. Park.
Todd Y. Park.
He was the CTO of the White House.
So this is incredible. You're the only person I've ever known that brought this to light, that Hillary Clinton wrote through the GSA $750,000 worth of approvals to create for having Facebook through a Russian who worked for Facebook
That was disclosed to Judicial Watch in a FOIA request.
Dmitry
Shevelenko.
So this is all well known. We've put this out on the site. Betsy's put this up on the site, showing you the documents. She paid $750,000 to create a template to win the election. That was her election, her coming presidential election. So while she was Secretary of State, she paid Facebook to do this. And then Facebook and dude Zuckerberg wants to play like, oh, it was just some Russian ads. No, it wasn't.
Those contracts started on September 29th of 2009. So this was soon after Hillary became Secretary of State. Those contracts started, but nobody knew about them because they were hidden in her email server, and GSA did not publish them.
Now, I'm going to ask you this. We've never talked about this. When Obama first got elected, 2008,
right?
Schmidt had already said back in 2004 that he was going all in and writing new algorithms so that he could control or have a big input into the election. And then when Hillary was involved, I think he was already saying, even back then when Hillary and Barack were still going through the primaries, that he's there for them.
Well, do you recall that Obama announced his candidacy on Facebook in it was either January, February of 2007. So Obama for America, that website that got up 30, 40, 50 million users,
Oops,
readers.
There's the Facebook again. Oh, that dude Zuckerberg. He's just everywhere, isn't he?
Well, they knew what they wanted, and they got it with the first election for Obama. And then I think Hillary started doubling down on what they had learned, and then so she says, well, I want a specific template, because the other thing that the Judicial Watch disclosures have revealed is that the use of Facebook around the planet was a big part of Hillary's plan for e-diplomacy, she called it. And she announced it at the museum and at the Council on Foreign Relations. Blumenthal actually wrote her speech where he actually wrote advertisement for Facebook and Twitter and Google right into the speech. So it was a big part of their strategy, and of course they used it in the Arab Spring and other places like that. But it was all a propaganda operation to push out the messages that they wanted through Facebook, and this all came out in the Judicial Watch disclosures.
Well, when Obama made it official and he changed it from just a Eric Schmidt Google offering and a Dude Zuckerberg template, and then giving over, what's the guy's name? What's his name?
Todd Y. Park.
Todd
Todd Y. Park.
Yes, Todd
By
Park.
the way, I need to point out about him. He first appeared on the radar screen. He was hired by the Department of Health and Human Services to be the architect for Obamacare.
But played like he didn't know anything about the fact that the site didn't work and they had to spend unbelievable amounts of money setting up a site that you could have set up on a weekend.
Well, think about this. Everybody made fun of him for the breakdown of the whole initial launch of the website. But if you look at what happened after that, I'm beginning to think that was a false flag. That the real point was to get everybody to buy the idea that they needed to bring in more, quote, smart people in to fix it, which came from Booz Allen Hamilton and other players in the deep state. And my belief now, and again, this is my personal opinion, that the intent of that whole exercise was to suck all of our healthcare information out into these dark profiles as a part of this data gathering operation for the intelligence agencies.
Absolutely, and we don't want to make light of what you said there, because we've seen this happen with Equifax. We've seen it happen with the largest departments in the government, where they steal all the information. They're setting up your own little dark profile where they can control you. They'll know all about your money, all your dark secrets. They'll implant child porn on your machine in case they want to arrest you, blah, 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 blah. Eric Schmidt said he was doing this in 2004.
Right.
He said, when I launch Alphabet will give you all of your news feeds automatically. Of course, they'll scrub it to make sure it's all fake news instead of real news. They won't let you out of the box. And if you come out of the box, they're going to charge you. And that is exactly what is going on with fake net neutrality. It's not neutral at all. They surveil everything. They control you. They sell everything.
WikiLeaks disclosed the emails that Schmidt sent to Obama proposing what ended up being the U.S. Digital Service, where in fact he laid out the whole business plan.
The notes for
exactly.
Democratic 2016 election, you sent those to me. I read them. It blew my mind. They're worse than the Podesta WikiLeaks revelations.
It talks about building a database about every person in the country. He clearly says
he is going to be connected to the DNC server, and that he's going to use their VAN system, and that he's going to use that VAN system not as it's supposed to be used, but as his project we're talking about, which I'm going to call the Alphabet, because that's Google's mother company. Eric Schmidt's idea is Alphabet's box. They're going to put you in a box. That's what they did with the people who were voting, and they remember.
Well,
it wasn't just Democrats that they were targeting. They had everybody. Right. That's why they don't want anybody to look into the DNC server. Plus, remember, they kept Bernie out. For weeks, he had to sue them to get back into his own system. Why? Because they were stealing all of his people too.
Right. Well, the other emails were from Robbie Mook to John Podesta, where the original name of that project was called the Eric Schmidt Project, and they were basically soliciting money from Eric Schmidt. And then he came back with a proposal to put in $1.5 billion and then create this election database.
Now, do we know how much Obama
Did I say million? I meant billion.
How much?
1.5 billion.
That was what Schmidt gave. How about what did Obama
and that project was going to last between 2000 and late 2015 and would stop at the election. So they were going to spend that money in less than 2 years.
Okay. Did Obama put in U.S. taxpayer dollars into the U.S. Digital Service?
Yeah. When he sent his... Well, first of all, he funded the operation of the U.S. Digital Service, the Eric Schmidt Project, at the White House.
Yes.
So he obviously lent staff and facilities there. But then he sent his chief technology officer, Todd Y. Park, out to California to work with Hillary for America, the Hillary campaign. I can't remember the name of Hillary 2016. As a part of that. And that is a violation of the Hatch Act, clearly.
And as we know, it was in the White House, this little United States Digital Service, which was nothing more than Eric Schmidt putting the Eric Schmidt plan or Eric Schmidt plan for the election or the template for winning, which is using Facebook and Google and all other social media. Because remember, what was the overt statement of what the United States Digital Service was supposed to do? They were supposed to modernize every single connection to everything in the internet world, right?
I have a question for you, because you're an expert on this area of psychology. You hear a lot about these triggerings that occur in social media around elections. How is it that these guys used social media to trigger certain reactions from the population?
Well, first off, they're saying that what they really did was they just brought certain things up, put certain things down, put an emphasis on what they wanted. So if you were a Trumpite, you're not going to see anything Trump. You're going to see only what they want you to see. So that much they admit that they controlled. Eric Schmidt completely says...
But it's much more...
Oh, it's 10,000 times worse. I'm just warming up.
Oh, sorry.
The psyops of Facebook is the most advanced that there is. It is a weaponized form of social control. So when you're looking at the pages, even the colors are well laid out. They actually create certain reactions in your brain, neurological reactions. Also, the speed that they're delivered, the subliminal content. You don't have to hear anything for there to actually be a subliminal control coming across Facebook. And that doesn't count anything you see.
Well, tell me about the dopamine responses, because that really struck me as one of the things that's definitely happening with interfaces. I'm an interface design guy, and the way things are popping up and down on the screens, and the way you're constantly being titillated with different ads, different messages, different text, and it's just constant. It's almost like they don't want you to get off the system.
Well, this was predicted in Star Trek. When they got this little machine and it was a game, and when you won something, it gave you a little direct neurological ecstatic experience, right? Pretty soon everyone was addicted to it, and the aliens just walked on the ship. No one even noticed them. Hello, that's you. That's us with our cell phones. Why is it cell phone? You're in a cell. Okay.
Right.
So how are they controlling you? Because they're getting instantaneous feedback. And you think you're connected to the world, right? You think you're a global mind. You think you're omnipresent. You can go anywhere in the world. I mean, Betsy talks to friends.
So it's personal power? You think you're getting personal power from these devices?
You think you're a god. You think you're omnipresent through being globalistically connected. You think that you're omniscient because you can do a Google and get any information you want. And you think you're omnipotent because you can tweet like Trump and take down an entire industry.
So related to election control, one of the ways they do it is first of all, they get you to use the technology. Then they control the things you see, the messages you hear. And so how is it that works with some people and not with others?
Some can be hypnotized, some cannot. It depends also on your nutrition. Do you have the strength to actually resist, say, electromagnetic frequencies that are bombarding you? Or let's say the microwave broadband transmissions. For some people, it makes them sick. Other people can take it all day long. Some people smoke their entire life and it doesn't kill them. Other people smoke for 10 years and they die of lung cancer.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know about what was going on at the White House. What kind of stuff was going on there behind the scenes that most people don't know about?
Susan Rice was unmasking everyone in the Trump campaign.
Right, but even beyond that, what was going on?
You mean during the Obama
No, during
election?
the election.
They had already planned that Hillary was going to be coronated, and they had everything set up. We could go on and on, or Michael can go on and on about all the executive orders that were set up so that basically the president becomes more powerful than ever in history.
Our title is How the Cyber White Hats Saved the Election, and I want to get to that.
Oh, you mean who won against the U.S. Digital Service?
Yes, I want to talk about that.
Oh, Alex Jones came out.
I want to talk about that picture that we had posted on Truth News Headlines.
Yes.
Looked like it was maybe inside the White House, I'm not sure.
Yes.
But who are these people sitting around the table? What were they doing?
That was a Google picture you put up, and that was the Google staff of the U.S. Digital Service.
That's what I want to know about, guys.
Who only worked for months at a time to make sure they didn't get the full picture, so there couldn't be any whistleblowers. They were paid exorbitant rates, and they created a whole federal program that paid them to be... Oh, that's how they got paid. Those people went on leave, and they were paid as a fellow, some kind of tech technological fellow or something.
Right.
And so they worked for a few months. And in that little tiny room, of course, they were also surveilling everything in the White House. So everything that was being on every telephone in the White House, that's how they knew exactly what Trump was saying to the head of different countries, and it was leaked before they even knew it because they were connected to the entire media.
Why do you think Google would publish a picture of the group that's actually trying to rig the election?
These people they're very sick in their minds. Now, what else was going on there? Right next to that was the secure compartmental information facility where Susan Rice was unmasking, right?
Right.
So it was all a connected plan. And who was running it all? Valerie Jarrett, the mob boss from Chicago, who had been running the Daily Mob family in Chicago for decades and who hired Michelle Obama, who was the handler of Barack Obama. And when she met Barack Obama, she says, I'm going to make you into the president. And once George Soros said yes, that was the end. And sorry, Hillary, whose dad was the second in charge of the mob in Chicago when Al Capone was killed and the mob in Chicago, the top dogs were killed. He became number 2 in charge of the Chicago mob. Rodham, she's a Rodham. And this is Chicago mob moved to Washington, and what they were doing was they were extorting these tech lords, because why? When he became president, he found out the truth about the fact that they stole your patents and what IBM Eclipse is. He found out that, and what did he do? He extorted them and said, "You people will give me $2 billion for my library," and they did. $2 billion. Before he left the White House, he extorted them for $2 billion, and then he allowed them to come in a complete revolving door experience going on in the White House. So Silicon Valley and the White House were one and the same.
Right.
And then the lobbyists for these people went everywhere, and they were taking over every currency, every commodity, and they were fleecing everything. That's what the U.S. Digital Service was doing, combining it into one centralized war room that was doing nothing more than running the Democratic program, what Obama was setting up for Hillary. And Hillary knew about all of this because she paid for it. We know she paid for it.
The interesting thing about the information on this digital service, you didn't hear about it at all, and yet it was hiding in plain sight because the White House actually published videos about it, and they made a big fanfare announcement about it. And then you hear that it's tied closely with a project called 18F, which was a similar project that was done in the Federal Election Commission. So when you see U.S. Digital Service and Federal Election Commission, you almost can be guaranteed that this was an election rigging program.
Merged with Homeland Security, merged with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, counterintelligence, particularly the counterintelligence office through Rasmussen, made available all the intelligence. All NSA raw data was made available because Obama allowed that to happen in the last months of his time. He also allowed Homeland Security to be in charge
that was
of
one
elections.
Of his last executive orders.
This was the Constitution was burnt. It no longer exists after Obama was there because he went after every single element of the Constitution that I know of, and everything he's doing here is completely illegal. This meddling in the election is the worst scandal. No, it's not even a scandal. It is the worst crime committed by politicians in American history.
So it was a miracle that Donald Trump got elected anyway.
Well, let's look at the primaries. Now, first off, the White Hats, I'm going to have you explain, but first I'm going to explain the primaries in my extremely opinionated point of view.
I hadn't noticed.
You hadn't noticed mine?
No.
Sometimes I get a little opinionated. Okay, we know that Bernie was screwed by Hillary because every single state had a different form of corruption, or all of them altogether.
I think that's admitted now. They know that.
Oh, I mean, when it came to the presidential election, they had buses that Veritas. Watch these buses coming 20 and 30 times to different polls, the same groups of buses being bussed from one state over to a smaller state, so that one of the states went against Trump. It would have gone for Trump had those bussed illegals. Those weren't even citizens. You don't have to state you're a citizen and show your I-9 card to vote is insanity.
Project Veritas outed that too. Got Creamer to admit it.
And completely. So with Hillary's corruption during the presidential, that's clear. During the primary, we saw that the states, the Secretary of States, would send their IT guy in after everybody else had gone, and changed the totals just before they were sent. If you saw on the big boards as we were watching it, you noticed Hillary jumped so far ahead of Trump at the beginning. It was like, oh, wait, this cannot be true. Even every newscaster was saying, this is crazy. This can't possibly be true. He can't be these numbers, and these numbers are here, and it's the same people reporting. Not possible. So then she didn't get any votes for a long time, and then he went up, and then you started to see, then there started to be that kind of, let's get as close as we can so that when we mess with the real numbers in the end, which you can explain to us, then we simply have to make a believable change in the totals.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the hanging, what were they called in Florida?
Hanging chads.
Remember what Baby Bush said on the airplane? I promise you I'm winning. Florida isn't over until we say Florida is over. Mm-hmm. And by golly, look, he won, didn't he? Isn't that amazing?
Well, I'm familiar with what happened in that election in Ohio because a lawsuit came out afterwards, which proved something called man in the middle. And I was not familiar with that previously, but I was pretty familiar with the rigged Diebold card reader machines, and assumed that all these electronic voting machines could easily be hacked.
Which was demonstrated. Fractional voting was demonstrated in Ohio and Florida.
Absolutely.
In front of the judges, again and again, every time.
But there's a foolproof mechanism called man in the middle. So that let's say you have a completely clean election. You can rig it with man in the middle, because man in the middle basically intercepts the votes coming from the counties to the state tabulating machine, which is a computer, and intercepts the vote and reroutes it to somebody who's monitoring those numbers, and that person then, or that group, changes the numbers and then moves those on to the state election tabulator.
Karl Rove.
Well, in 2004, that appears to have happened in Ohio because this lawsuit that went on from 2005 or 6 all the way to 2013. I mean, I think it might even still be in a stasis mode.
Yeah, I don't think it's closed yet.
But anyway, what they discovered years later is that a consultant for a small college in Ohio, Cedarville College, was a, quote, election monitor for the state Secretary of State's office. And I'm not saying the Secretary of State, who was Blackwell at the time, was in on this, but this guy was. And he was hired as a consultant to another consultant. So he had a contract with the state. And he was receiving these signals from the counties before they went into the state election tabulator to monitor them, quote. I'm making quotes with my fingers. And then he was using the Cedarville College computers to send that signal down to a company in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And the numbers were then moved back through his computer at Cedarville College, then on to the state tabulator. And as it turns out, the company in Chattanooga, Tennessee, according to these court documents and testimony, was a company by the name of Smart Tech, whose clients included Karl Rove, the Republican Party, and the Bush family.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
The Bushes? You think that they might have messed with the election?
I'm just telling you what this said in the this court case. So the reason this came out is the technology provider for the Republicans, a guy by the name of Michael Connell, died mysteriously in a plane crash. He was a very skilled pilot in flying into his home in Canton, Ohio. Died. All the evidence was taken out overnight. All still total mystery what happened to Michael or how he died. Well, we know he died in a plane crash, but we don't know why. And that was in late 2008, right before Barack Obama took power.
When Baby Bush ran the second time, because they knew the first time was a cheat, they put out more people at the polls, exit poll people, than ever in U.S. presidential election history. Then they hired the best statisticians from all the universities, and they all agreed that George W. Bush, Baby Bush, only won if it was true that 1 out of 350 million chances happened.
Well, the reason
That's more people than voted.
the reason this lawsuit was filed was because they had done exit polls and found that Gore, or was it Gore, was seven. There was a 7% discrepancy from the total vote to the exit polls, and they say if it's more than 2%,
Exactly.
it's fraud.
In any other country, we insist that duly elected person, because our fake electoral watchers in other countries, if we determine that it's not a good vote, then we just say it's
Okay, so
invalid.
here's what happened after.
Why not in America?
You know this thing's totally corrupt, because afterwards, when that lawsuit started, all the voting machines were impounded. And they are impounded to this day. Nobody has ever audited the actual counts from the counties in that election.
I can tell you I watched endless films of people using those Diebold machines and coming up with results that favored Bush. Also, I remember seeing the 2 times that the owner of the Diebold company said, if you get my machines in these key states, I will give you the election. He said that in public.
Well, there's a great HBO documentary called Hacking Democracy where they actually showed a group of people how to do that.
So Alex Jones, some weeks ago, shocked me, and then of course afterwards I called you and you shocked me when he said that the White Hats went in and, first off, let me just quote George Soros. George Soros, before the election, was asked, who's going to win? He goes, absolutely Hillary will win. And the person said, well, how can you possibly know absolutely that Hillary will win? He goes, oh, don't worry, Trump will win the popular vote, but I've taken care of the electoral votes with paid political announcements. In other words, the subliminal control in his $200 million campaign in the last 2 weeks was supposed to subliminally make sure that the electors in the Electoral College would throw the vote to Trump, even if the popular vote, he couldn't control them through the ads. So he was quite confident of this. It was only Paul Manafort, the most powerful lobbyist in the world, who got Yanukovych reelected after being kicked out of office in Ukraine, came in and he got the Electoral College to vote along their legal lines instead of the fact that most of them said they weren't voting for Trump. So and then I asked the question. I said, this can't be possible. Manafort can't do this. And then I heard the answer. It was a Facebook app that the Electoral College used. So somehow Manafort got control, and the White Hats won there too.
Interesting.
So when Alex Jones came out and said the White Hats, they knew that Trump was going to win the popular vote, but that it's all rigged because we saw the rigging.
He said local sheriffs were brought into the state, in the swing states, to basically put a firewall around the firewall to prevent any tampering with this man-in-the-middle approach, and that probably saved.
How does that happen? Was that a hack? Do you have to physically
No.
be at the machine?
You just have a technology guy go in there and put a firewall into the Ethernet connection that's going into the computer, and
Can
basically
you do that remotely?
not and be sure that you can really stop things. You need to be right there at the site.
So these are Patriot White Hats who did this.
Yes, I believe that's true.
Well, I believe that is our history right now. And I believe that people are very silly to attack Trump knowing that over half of America, probably more like 65% of America, totally supports Trump and has not lost faith in him. So when you attack Trump, there's like this reverse thing that happens, which we call the Trump effect. It's like the Jedi warrior was supposed to have. He's supposed to have a shield that when someone shoots at it, the energy they use to get you goes back at them. That's Trump. He doesn't have to attack anybody, but when they attack him, they better be ready, because then what happens? Scarborough's dirt comes out. Lauer's dirt comes out. Hollywood falls. NFL falls. I mean, are people paying any attention to the fact that this social network that was created is now, it was created as a weapon to be used against us, and now our own president uses it against them, the real creators.
Well, now they're trying to use net neutrality to stop that by implementing censorship through the net neutrality. But hopefully it's going to get flipped back to the Department of Commerce, so this whole issue with monopolies can be applied instead of this net neutrality rule.
So true, but Michael, I'm getting really worried right now because I realize that you know Russians. And so I'm kind of wondering, are you going to tell me there was no Russian meddling in the presidential election? Don't get me upset by saying there wasn't, because I just spent a year and a half nonstop hearing how there was. Oh no, that was all fake news. Do you think there was any Russian meddling in the election? You know Russia better than anybody I know.
Well, I don't think there are any simple answers to a complex question.
That's a good engineer's answer.
Especially related to an entire continent with, 10, 11 time zones? You can't make any generalizations about that many people.
Well, how about
it's
that
impossible.
Friend of yours, Putin? Oh, is he a friend of yours? No.
I don't know.
You were only friends with Yeltsin, right?
We might have we might have had an encounter years
you
ago.
have to disclose this.
Years ago.
Are you a foreign agent? Come on. That's why Tony is not nowhere to be found. That's why John Podesta says he's had nothing to do with his brother and his company for 15 years. That's why Flynn is going down. Manafort's going down. Are you a foreign agent, Michael?
The Russians are skilled enough to hack? Absolutely, they're skilled enough to hack. They're very bright programmers, and are their ethics the best in the world? Hey, there's a lot of scoundrels over there too. So I'm not saying it didn't happen or couldn't happen. But think about all the money we have spent on security in this country, and to hear this juvenile accusation about Russia as if it's some cartoon is just laughable. Because if we haven't spent enough money to this date to protect ourselves, running around with our hair on fire saying the Russians did it is again just laughable.
As far as I can tell, they're our friends, and if they supported anybody, it would have been Hillary. So thank you for your opinion on that. So you are not a Russian agent?
No.
And you don't know that there was Russian meddling, but you know they're smart enough if they wanted.
They could, if they wanted to meddle, they could. But I don't believe that that's what happened.
I know who the Russian meddlers were. That would be Dmitry Alperovich, his father Michael, and a few of other people that we've already pointed out. So there's and also what's his name, Dmitry.
How about Yuri Milner and his
Yuri Milner and Alishar.
Well, I mean that's why you can't make a simple solution to the answer to the question about did the Russians meddle. There are Russians involved with Facebook for sure. I mean, the Russians have made billions and billions of dollars off of the Facebook IPO. That's known. That's public.
So they wouldn't hurt Facebook because that's where it's a moneymaker.
Well, they've cashed out a lot of that already.
Okay, they're smart.
So the Russians lived under a communist system that was totally depraved for 70, 80 years. That did things to people in the Soviet Union. It messed up their heads. And so a lot of bad things happened. But in the same breath, a lot of very good things happened, and it really honed their skills, their character, their courage. And so you've got a lot of different types of people in the Soviet Russia, just like you do here.
Well, who's Putin going to back, Hillary or Trump? Who is he backing in the election? Who did he vote for?
The problem I have with any of those questions is the level of duplicity all over the planet related to world powers is enormous and off the charts. Mm-hmm. So I can't tell. Mm-hmm. I mean, these guys are skilled liars on all sides. So what we're being fed is what they want us to believe about the situation, which I believe is just sophomoric.
You have such correct answers. You are not like me. I go ahead and speculate because
no, I don't want to speculate because I have hired Russian programmers and they're very skilled. But the other thing I've also learned about dealing in business with Russians in the early 90s is there was a joke we used to make that a contract's the beginning of negotiations to a Russian.
That's funny. I think we'll end on that tone.